Hello, my name is Jenna Goddard, and I'm the Writing Center Coordinator at Thompson Rivers University, where I also teach student success courses. Today, I'm going to chat a little bit about thesis statements. Students often come into the Writing Center and ask about thesis statement construction, so I thought I'd put together a short video for you. First, I'd like to acknowledge that Thompson Rivers University is situated on the traditional lands of the Tk'emlúps te Secwépemc within Secwepemcúlecw. In this video, I'll first talk about what a thesis statement is. I'll provide a few examples of an argumentative thesis statement. I'll then introduce some common myths and facts around thesis statements. Then I'll share some do's and don'ts. And finally, I'll share some resources that are available to you in the TRU Writing Center. So a thesis statement is a few things. It's an important guiding statement that lets your reader know where you're going in your essay. It's like GPS for really bad drivers like me. Typically, you'll encounter 3 different kinds of thesis statements in university writing. 1, argumentative, when you're trying to prove a point. 2, analytical, where you're doing an in-depth analysis of something. And 3, expository, where you're explaining something. I'm going to be focusing on argumentative thesis statements, since this is the kind you'll be constructing when you're writing your research paper. One of the most important points about thesis statements is that they are clear and concise. Sometimes students get confused and think that thesis statements include all of the background context or introductory information that actually belongs in your introductory paragraph. Your thesis statement should only include your topic, your position on that topic, and reference to your major supporting arguments. Here are a couple examples of what argumentative thesis statements could look like. In the first example, you'll see that the topic is underlined. I'll know right away that this paper is going to talk about Canada's universal healthcare system. The position on this topic is highlighted in yellow. So I know that the writer is going to try to convince me that there needs to be greater funding for Canada's healthcare system. You can also see the 3 main arguments. The first argument is in green. I know that the first paragraph will talk about how Canadians are plagued by a shortage of family doctors. The second paragraph should then talk about the long wait times for surgeries, and the third paragraph will talk about how pharmaceuticals are too expensive for many low-income families. I've broken down the second example in a similar way. Myth number 1, the thesis statement is your opinion. Actually, your thesis statement is a claim that is grounded in research and analysis. And you use the rest of your essay to convince your reader of the validity of your claim. Myth number 2, you need to know your main argument before you begin. In fact, your thesis is likely to change as you either do your research or as you write your paper. Creating a thesis statement before you start your research or writing is often a useful way to narrow your focus of your research. Think about your thesis statement as the end of your thought process, even though it might come at the beginning of your paper. Myth number 3, you have to show both sides of the issue. Although your thesis should be debatable, it doesn't mean that you always have to argue against a particular person or a position. It's important to incorporate a variety of perspectives. However, you don't have to address every single perspective, as not all claims are equally valid. Myth number 4, your argument needs to have 3 supporting points. You may have been introduced to the 5-paragraph essay structure in high school. However, university writing doesn't always reflect this. In fact, you need to support your argument, but there's no fixed number of points or paragraphs in which to do so. Instead, include as many main arguments or paragraphs that's necessary to prove your argument. Myth number 5. The thesis statement begins your introductory paragraph. In fact, your thesis statement should be placed at the end of your introductory paragraph. Your introductory paragraph leads your reader through the background or context of your topic and ends with your thesis statement. Just a disclaimer, this is the most common place to put your thesis statement. However, your instructor might ask for you to put it elsewhere. When it comes to writing your thesis statements, never put it in the form of a question. That's why it's called a thesis statement. Your thesis statement should also never be a fact. It should be something that could be argued one way or the other. Don't make your thesis statement too broad. It's really important that you narrow your focus and that your thesis statement is concise. Which brings me to my next point. Do make your thesis statement concise. Some people feel tied to the fact their thesis statement should be one sentence, and often it is. However, it does reflect the complexity of your research paper, so it may be more than one sentence. Make sure you relate everything in your paper back to your thesis statement and ultimately proving it to be true. And do make a writing appointment with a Writing Center tutor who can check over your thesis statement for clarity and concision. Feel free to check out these additional resources on the Writing Center website. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out my other videos on academic writing and study skills.